This is going to be an overview of Michelangelo, one of my absolute favorite artists. He used to be my number one favorite artist when I was a teenager, and I mean, I guess he still is. It's hard to imagine other artists that have been so impressionable. I mean, there's Da Vinci, but I think there's better works that survived by Michelangelo, and he's, well, it's questionable. But anyway, I don't want to, divide people in terms of who their favorite artists are. But anyway, Michelangelo, very significant Renaissance artist, and he basically ignited the Renaissance in Florence. As he was coming up, he grew up in Florence. He was a sculptor. When he started out, that was kind of how he made his bones. Famously, Da Vinci hated sculptors. Da Vinci was a kind of a snobby guy, and he was what's called a dandy. He was like a tall, very flamboyant guy, and Michelangelo, as Da Vinci described sculptors, was covered in dust, from these sculptures. And he was more like a laborer type guy, and sculpture was, looked down upon by certain fine artists. What was interesting during that time is, you see the mediums that were used is tempera, which is egg-based, so it's like pigment mixed with yolk, and then that makes it stick. And then actually oil paint, as we know it now, was Da Vinci, not quite invention, but he was a proponent of using oil paint. So anyway, so in this period, this is what he's doing, this is what Michelangelo is doing in his teens, basically. This one here he's 17. So he's born in 1475. This is the Belvedere torso, which was very influential. He didn't do that, but it was discovered around prior to, this period. And then, so it was very influential. These are, I guess, ink drawings. I mean, he did it all. He could sculpt, he could draw, he could paint, you name it, he did everything. He was phenomenal. This looks like Da Vinci, yeah. Da Vinci had, famously a lot of unfinished artworks, and only 12 finished works in total by Da Vinci. Little story about this. He apparently went back and signed it. It's his only sculpture that has a signature, and it was well received, and he went and carved his name in it, just to kind of not be forgotten. But this was early in his career. His early 20s, 1499, so he's 24. And he did this phenomenal work, phenomenal. When I was growing up, I actually stole a Michelangelo book from my library in high school. I loved it so much I wanted to have it at home. And I stole this book and eventually got rid of it when I moved to the US. I sold all my books, but I was a huge fan. So much for that I'd commit a crime or a sin. Yeah, beautiful. I mean, I loved his figure work, and more so actually his figures in the sketch. They're more realistic than Michelangelo. Than Da Vinci. This apparently is a recreation of something he did that got lost. So this is a recreation here. It's they call it a cartoon section of the cartoon. So, but it's quite good. I don't know how they quite recreated that. Like to get, I guess like the artist picked up the style of Michelangelo. All right, and then we just jump into. I mean, this book goes fast through his career. So there's the Sistine Chapel and the Pope and all this stuff. He was doing the work on the Sistine Chapel as like wet on wet technique, he had to basically almost mix the paint within the plaster. So it's a fresco, the word is. So he had to paint while the plaster's wet, and then like when it dried, it locked in all the paint. It was very difficult and very taxing. Just beautiful stuff. And his figures look very masculine. The story is that apparently his figures looked masculine because female models were more expensive, so most of his reference was male. They also say that even though he very likely died a virgin, that he might have been gay, partially because he had this male model that was much younger than him, which he wrote love poetry to, basically. So I haven't examined those love poems, but that's what they say. So he was kind of almost a religious man, Michelangelo, very devoted to God and very pious, and just an artist, and almost like, I think it was probably tricky for artists back then to be like the debaucherous, and then still serve like popes and cardinals and so forth. There was the story of Raphael, which I haven't it's on Wikipedia. I don't know how reliable that is, but apparently the way Raphael died was from over exhaustion and fever after like days of love making with his mistress. So, kind of a different story. So Raphael really went to town in the ways of sin, while Michelangelo and even Da Vinci were suspected to be gay and very likely had little or no sex most of their lives. Although there's a paper by Sigmund Freud regarding Da Vinci having been caught early in his life in this kind of like sex ring, like gay, like almost like like they have sometimes in they used to have like 20 years ago or so, where they'd catch like gay men doing weird activity in the park, and then like the police would have to break it up and maybe arrest one or two people. So there was something like that apparently with Da Vinci, but Michelangelo has a more of a cleaner history. So this is brilliant. A study of the birth of Adam from the Sistine Chapel. I mean, this figure is phenomenal. I love that he's like searching for lines there. That's wonderful to see. I like how the hand is like separately studied. He's just so wonderfully knowledgeable about like the muscles and the knees and the nuances of shape, like of forearms and he's great with volumes. Yeah, phenomenal with volumes, and beautiful work here. This one's kind of messed up. The foreshortening is messed up, and I think he probably realized it, and that's why he left the hand out, or I don't know what happened there. which he did first. Maybe he started with this, and then all of a sudden the head got too big, and he's like, "Oops, forget about it," and when they intersected. And then he's known for like wide bodies, especially the Last Judgment. But here, everybody's like thick, very thick. The proportions might have been affected by the angles that he had to paint at. Like he had to paint everything on his back and scaffolding and so forth. This is a brilliant piece. He's got such wonderful gestures. It's 500 years so far of inspiration to artists. Like he showed us how to do things. Like make things interesting, nice pose. Showing the nude body. Like the beauty of the nude body. This is a wonderful page, very famous. The study of I forget which it's like a siren. I don't know, like a Sybil or something. I forget what character from the Bible she is. And then the toe, study of the toe, just everything. The hand. Geez, a sheer master. The rendering here, like this is before there were books about how you should shade, like hatching and cross hatching and stuff. So he's just shading intuitively. He's making his own rules, and it's later where artists analyze, like I teach about shading, like hatching, and I'm sure other artists, like they said, well, look, all the lines are in the same direction, so maybe that's one way to go. And I'm sure they had they taught it over the years. But this is wonderful, the way he shows shape and volume and muscle and everything, the anatomy through tone. And it's just like you squint your eyes and it's perfect, like it's like a black and white photo, all this. It's just absolutely stunning. Yeah, this is a great one. Great, wonderful expressions. The hands, like he's so expressive with the hands. This is the piece that was studied before, and obviously wonderful. Look, he knew how he's going to put everything together, and it's not like he nails one thing. Like, okay, you got that foot, but the other foot is perfect too. Like everybody's got expression. Everybody's twisted and turned and doing something. Like these background characters are a little messed up. Like she's not so good. Who knows? Maybe some assistants did those. But apparently he didn't have too many assistants. This is the famous Moses sculpture. Beautiful stuff. I believe this is in some mausoleum. Tomb of Julius II. So he designed this too. So I guess like when he gets a big commission like that, maybe he had advisors if he's going into like a new field, like architecture. And another knockout. So he does the Sistine Chapel, goes back to sculpture. It goes wherever the commissions lead him. These are phenomenal. So one of the things that I learned early on about Michelangelo was that his idea of like the way he uncovered the sculpture, he believed a God would lead him to a rock, and then within that rock was the sculpture, and he would dust and chisel and dust the debris away and reveal what was there by God. And that's a beautiful way of looking at it. And I think the more advanced you get as an artist, the more you begin to see, especially the figure that way. You begin to see everything like a cube, and like a three-dimensional cube, and then within that cube is like a figure. So everything is within kind of you could see it as a coffin, or like a large coffin, a comfortable coffin, or like a room, or a closet, or whatever, and within perspective, and within that, there's positive space, the body, and then there's negative space. And it's your job to just like draw only the figure, only the positive space. So, when artists are using things like the Loomis method of drawing, when you become advanced and you shed those training wheels of the technique or the building of shapes, then you just draw what's there, and it's also not about line, because I studied like drawing on the right side of the brain, and that's just line, and there's a danger of becoming flat with your drawings when you're just following the lines. So you have to have the in-between. You have to know everything in your mind and see everything as 3D, and then see the figure within that space, and then you just kind of go in like a 3D program, basically, and you just actually solidify and draw the lines that count, that you want the public to see. So these are later drawings. He lived a long time, like 80 years old or something like that. So, I mean, they're good drawings. I'm not a big fan of the subject. Beautiful stuff. I mean, geez, look at that. His figures kind of are strange at times. Like here they're also seen pretty strange. Maybe, I don't know, who knows, maybe it's a matter of his models, maybe like he's just, what's always strange is like the breasts on women here, like, I mean, maybe his models look like that, or he's just adding them on, like on male figures. So this is what I'm talking about. This picture, especially on the cover, he looks so wide. It's such a famous picture. And originally everything was naked. Everyone was naked. And later on, because I guess like at some point, people at the Vatican were offended, or people in Rome were offended by the nudity, especially above the altar, because this was done many years later, like 30 years later, above the altar. So the Sistine Chapel's on the ceiling, and this is above the altar. So it was like too much for people's eyes, and so they had some guy that put breeches on everyone, and everybody made fun of him because that's what he was known for. He was the guy that painted like underwear on everyone. And this is the altar. Look at that. Phenomenal stuff. And there's all these references in here, like he's commenting on actual people. Like this is supposed to be like the skin of some critic or something. So they're all like quibs, and he injects his own little things in there. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Again, like, yeah, the breasts, like, they look so odd, the females are also muscular. Like, look how muscular she is. That's crazy. But, like, it's interesting. It's still, cool looking stuff. And the poses are amazing. That's the thing. The poses are still amazing. And I think even Rubens later on, like 100 or so years later, his females weren't obviously as muscular, but they were thick. So beautiful poses. Like, look at this with the hand here. Like, phenomenal stuff. This is a great face. This looks like, just that face there looks like Delacroix or something, you know, like looks more French. You know, it's like kind of like high rendering right there on the face. And, you know, like you could kind of tell what he was into. He was obviously into figures, a lot of male figures. And, you know, he just focused on his strengths. Like, this is phenomenal. I mean, anyways, I could go on and on with just being in awe. It's well done here, where everything is in shadow, and I like the tones here a lot better. The back muscles are a little messed, like it's hard to tell what's going on there. But he sells it really well, same here. But you could still see the shoulder blade there. So he still sells it really, really well. This book kind of focuses a lot on this. And I think there must be, like, I forget, it's been a while since I read it, but like, this is probably a little bit of a story. So some figure, let's see, that's just in detail, the resurrection of the body, the punishment of the sodomites. So it's like, some reference to that. I don't think this is his drawing. This is something else. And yeah, this is some reference, like I mentioned. I think this is supposed to be, it says, in this second face of his appears a celebrated self-portrait of Michelangelo. Well, Michelangelo had a kind of a bumpy nose because he got into a fight early on. So I don't know if they're saying this is supposed to be it. Or maybe this kind of would maybe look like more like him, but he usually had a beard later on. But yeah, Michelangelo had like some fight early on, and there's a famous portrait of Michelangelo done by somebody else, and I don't know if it's here anywhere. Let's see. It's here. Yeah, this is there's a painting, and then this is a sculpture probably based on the painting. So you see he had kind of a bump. This is Michelangelo, what he kind of looked like. And then later, some of his unfinished sculptures. I mean, this is fairly finished. You know, it's pretty good. You know, only that's kind of a little rough. And then architectural work. It's amazing how diverse he was, his architectural drawings. So he did the drawings himself. It wasn't like he just, you know, he had somebody handle that. This is nice. I wonder if this is, they were saying maybe this is perhaps a self-portrait as well, but the nose is different. But, you know, like, artists kind of inject themselves into their work, you know, so it's kind of a famous thing. These are the portraits I'm thinking of. This is the one that I've seen a lot of, and I think like the hand and arms are unfinished in that picture. And this, I guess, there's probably only been like about one, and then everybody just kind of bases their renditions on the one that's available, which is, well, this is the more famous one that I'm familiar with. So, so these little sketches are really nice. Yeah, it'd be good to have like an even bigger book with more of his works. But this is one that I got recently. They're really cheap to find online. You could get them for like $4 on eBay. I just wanted to have something, again, like maybe eventually I'd like to get like a nice book to commemorate my love of Michelangelo. So, but his images are like readily available in so many places. So yeah, this is an overview of Michelangelo, the great Renaissance man, Renaissance artist. Inspired generations and generations. Thank you.